Welcome to Sib Spot. Somebody in the comments section wanted more malicious compliance stories, so we're doing a few. Our first story is by Eureka. Most expensive tip ever. Nearly 15 years ago, I went to work for a company. The intent was for me to complete a project in quality and then move over into program management, but someone quit and I was asked to fill in as a customer quality engineer. This meant that every month, I traveled to customer sites, did the first pass analysis of our defective products, and got yelled at. A lot. It sucked. Also worth mentioning, our branch of the company was too small to use the corporate travel, so for every trip I was scouring discount travel sites to find the cheapest flight/hotel/car. I was ridiculously vigorous in seeking best prices. If the worst trash car was $32 a day and the not-so-trash car was $34 a day, I picked the $32 per day car to save the company $2 per day. One fine trip several months in was spectacularly awful. Not only did I have a truly terrible car, the hotel was all new depths of yuck. My shoes stuck to the carpet in my room, and the security flipper thing on the door was plastic. Also, it was in the worst part of town, and I worried about my safety to the point that I ended up pulling the little couch over to block the door and sleeping on it. Adding to my misery, I was sick. I had some creeping crud that plugged my sinuses and made me long for death. Normally, I'd have canceled the trip, but the customer was in an uproar about our continued repeating defects and required someone to be there. I made this trek every month. And once during every trip, I would eat at the local Outback Steakhouse. It was a known quantity, the people who worked there were great, and it helped me to have that connection. On this particular trip, I made my way to the Outback for dinner and I was clearly sick and miserable. And the workers took care of me. They sat me next to the fireplace, brought me tea, and had the kitchen make me chicken noodle soup even though it wasn't on the menu. I nearly cried. I was so grateful. My bill for dinner was less than $10, so I charged $20. Yes, more than 100% tip, but their kindness kept me going. I got home, did my expense report, and turned it in. My director called me into his office and screamed at me about how corporate policy was 10% tip, and it should never exceed 15%, and what was wrong with me for paying them so much. Remember, the total bill, including excessive tip, was $20. It broke me. Well, it shattered my loyalty to the company's bottom line. So I made them give me the corporate travel policy where the tip policy was outlined, and from that moment on, I followed the corporate travel policy exactly. No more trash $32 per day cars. I'm in a midsize or better. No more flying out at 4 a.m. in the center seat. The flights fit my schedule and I sat where I wanted. No more scary hotels in the worst part of town. Now I'm staying at the nicest exclusive hotel allowed by the policy. The cost of my trips were pretty regularly double or triple what they had been, adding up to thousands of dollars a year. But I never disobeyed their allowable tip policy again. The true irony: their corporate tip policy actually had verbiage that said exceptional service could be recognized with an additional gratuity, but basically don't make a habit of it. Also, the allowable per diem was $50 per day, and a receipt was only required if over that amount. So the tip that started the whole thing was within per diem, allowable for exceptional service, and the receipt for it had not been necessary. I haven't been on many business trips, but there was a period of time where for the union at my school, I got to go on some trips and you would kind of spend what money you could. We didn't really love our union. It wasn't a very cohesive unit, and you would kind of spend where you could, when you could, whatever was allowed. It's the only joy you can really get out of having to take a 7-hour trip. Our next story is by Small Life. Halloween group costume? Fine. I'm an IT guy, not customer facing, always behind the scenes. If you saw me walking through the clinic in my jeans and cowboy boots, you probably wouldn't even know I worked there. My boss decided that everyone on her large team had to dress up as characters from Wizard of Oz one year. As in, she wanted us fully decked out with great costumes, face paint, the whole bit. I don't do costumes. Can't stand stuff on my face and have too much work to do to be bothered. But I immediately agreed. I made a frame out of 3/4 PVC pipe and my wife sewed green curtains to hang on it. I was the man behind the curtain. Edit to add detail. I put the curtain in front of my office door that day so no one could see me. When we took the team pic, my boots were sticking out under the curtain. Hundreds of people knew exactly who that was. Boss was pissed. She got fired for bad management a few months later. I actually love this. It depends. During Halloween, there were some times when I dressed up just because I felt like it. But usually I don't feel like putting paint on my face or wearing heavy clothes because I would usually get way too warm at work. So I'm not big on costumes myself, but I had this coworker who was a social studies teacher that just loved dressing up, and she knew that I would partake if asked. So I'm definitely in some of the old lady costume dress-ups, and I had to pull my teeth in and talk like I was an old lady a couple times. But man, I was hot that day, wearing a wig and everything. Oh, it was awful. Our next story is by Jag Hag. Good for the goose, good for the gander. So relatively soon after college, I moved to Washington, D.C. I was working in the hospitality industry with my brand spanking new psychology degree and barely scraping by. Looking for a better job, I applied for a position with a congressional committee answering fundraising letters that had contained contribution checks. When I interviewed for the job, the guy, Wyatt, posed his last question, which was how much of a pay cut would I take off the advertised salary to get the job? None, was my answer, as I was looking to move ahead financially, not take a step back. He wasn't pleased with the answer, but hired me anyway. Why? Because there were multiple huge USPS canvas sacks of mail to be answered as the job had gone unfilled for 6 months. I'm a pretty hard worker and I dove right into it. I came in early, I worked through lunch, I stayed late to get all that mail caught up. It took me about 6 months of unpaid extra time to get it under control. Then, one day I asked to leave a half-hour early to catch a non-stop train to New York City to visit my brother. Wyatt, with whom I had a less than easy relationship, told me I could have the 30 minutes, but he would take it off my earned paid time off. I was pretty ticked off, in that I had pretty much donated about 2 hours extra a day to my job since I had started, and had kind of thought that would mean something. Silly me. There's where his mistake lies right there. Never, ever assume that you donating time to them will mean something. It doesn't. So I returned from New York City with that epiphany in mind. Monday morning, I was at work early as usual, but reading a book at my desk. Wyatt comes in early and says he wants to talk to me in his office. I put my book down, pointedly looked at my watch, said, "Sure, Wyatt. My workday starts in 15 minutes, so I will be down in your office at 8 a.m. His turn to be pissed. Very pissed. And he asked WTF, and I explained. And I noted that if my extra work meant nothing, then I certainly wasn't going to expend it on committee's behalf. I am sure that being told this by a 22-year-old, whom he didn't like to begin with, didn't sit well with him. As would be expected, our working relationship only got worse. He found every way to treat me badly, and I found every way to live by the rules, until I found another job. Never, ever work without pay. If you're an hourly employee, only work the hours you're paid to work. Don't come in and do extra, because they will pinch every penny that they can from you. Our stories have come to a close for today. If you like this content, click like or subscribe or leave a comment. It helps my channel grow and reach others in the YouTube algorithm. Until we meet again, have a smashing day.